H-U-L-L-C-I-T-Y. 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 That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Look, I'm okay. It's been a hectic couple of weeks at work, and then football's been a bit dour.
It has. I mean, the positive side is, I think I was saying it to Logan last week, we're back to midnight kickoffs as of this weekend at least, so we're not staying awake or struggling to stay awake until close to 4 a.m. our time, which will be nice. But yeah, dour is certainly a word for it. We've got the 0-0 draw with Rotherham to talk about this week. And look, it seems on brand for City that all these games that have the ticket deals and the ticket bonuses where you get the big crowds, the bumper crowds, we just don't seem to be able to deliver a good performance for them. It's probably, Jun would be kind of scratching his head and being a bit frustrated that it's probably making the job of converting those casual supporters into sort of rusted on members pretty difficult.
Yeah, I think it's been amazing to watch how those initiatives and the things that he is doing develop over the season, and watch the MKM just slowly fill up. And to have, I think, was our best home attendance in 6 years or something.
It's got to be.
I think it was since the Tottenham on the last day of the last Premier League season.
Yeah.
Is amazing. But yeah, frustratingly for Jun, for us as fans, for the fans that are paying to get into the stadium, we just can't seem to handle, I don't know, the pressure of a full stadium or something. Sort of in those moments, those games that it counts when everyone's there. I thought like the performance was, I think, like, realistically, I look at like all our performances across the last couple of months, and I don't really think there's necessarily been like, it feels like it must be up, and like there must be a big, like, up and down and an inconsistency in the performances, because we've had some close losses, some big losses, a lot of draws, a couple of tight wins. They feel like they're all over the shop. But realistically, I feel like we're actually playing fairly consistently. And one of the consistent issues that's coming across is a lack of cutting edge in the final third. But in terms of creating like chances, as we have been for a long time, creating chances, we are creating lots and lots of chances, and it's a failure to capitalize, which is costing us points in an individual game and across like series of games. It's the same thing. The defense has tightened up immensely. And even I think I made a comment about this, felt like, especially with the red card laid on, this felt like, some of the other games we've played, where, against Sunderland, for example, where we were able to secure that one. But before that, what were the other games that we had that we end up losing? Did we lose or draw? I can't remember. But
yeah, there was definitely a few.
So we've had a few games, like, if I can remember, but a few games where we had, got the man advantage, but then couldn't capitalize. But at least, like, I know with Sunderland we managed to peg one back, but at least we didn't concede against a 10-man team. So that's a positive. Are Rotherham a great team? Probably not. But it is so easy, and you actually see it happens way more often than you would think that it would. Is that like that 10-man team being able to be resilient, get, I guess, underestimated in that little patch of the game, or just pick their moment and go and nab one. So it was good that we didn't. How some of the
I was going to say
didn't go in, because I think
two fans, Longman,
great one from Longman. That when I watched the replay, I said, why didn't he just had to lift that the tiniest bit. I don't know why I didn't try and lift it at all with the keeper sliding out, but Just had to lift that. Tufa in the opposite, just had to keep it down. Jones laid on. Right, and so
It felt a lot. It felt a lot like the Preston 0-0 draw as well, and I think your point about consistency of performance is really accurate because, we sort of said after the Preston game, I think it might have come a couple of games after we beat QPR 3-0 where the goals against QPR were reasonably fluky, where we said, well, you could flip the results and say if the QPR game had been 0-0 and the Preston game, the chances we'd had gone in, you kind of go, that was a deserved win against Preston. In a similar way with this one, I think, if Longman's effort goes in early in the game, that great through ball from Traore, who again, put in a really top-notch performance to go with his performance against, was it Reading? I think he got the assist. You sort of think if we score that one early with the crowd behind us, you'd suddenly kind of floodgates potentially opening there. And it's sort of where I feel a lot of sympathy for Rossini, and I think he's sort of making the same sort of points where he's saying, look, the consistency of performances are now there. The efforts on goal, like we're not getting enough shots on target, I think is a big issue as well. But then I also think, we've kind of been rotating a front three between a whole lot of different players. You've got no consistency. And I sort of, you look at like a Middlesbrough and you look at Akpom, Force and Archer and McGree as well. And they've played 70 to 80% of the season. Like, I don't know the specific stats, but I'm sure that they've played the vast majority of games for Borough. You think if you had that sort of durability, I guess, of like Tete, Connolly, Oscar, and you said to them, go out there for 35 games, you're going to play, 70 to 80 minutes, we'd have a much more solid goal return and a much better win rate, I think. And that's where I sort of think the performances are there. We sort of opened by saying it was a Dow performance. It was Dow because it was 0-0 and we couldn't break them down. But the chances were there, the opportunities were there. We're not playing particularly poorly. It's just we just don't have that sort of finishing touch.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, there's lots of complaints about the style of play, and I think I feel like it's too easy just to say, oh well, we didn't win, or we're not scoring goals, so the style of play doesn't work, because the style that Rossini is trying to play is one, solid at the back, and I think that undoubtedly has shown to have occurred. We were leaking goals pretty heavily before he came in.
I think we had the worst defensive record in the top 6 divisions or something.
The worst. As I was going to say, if it wasn't the worst, it was close to the worst. And then we come in and we're, yes, there's been quite a few nil-nils, but that at least means that's a point on the road. And as most coaches can agree, most managers, if you don't concede any goals, you've at least got the opportunity to go and nick 1-0. But once you concede, then you've got to score 2 to win. Once you concede 2, you've got to score 3 to win, and it becomes much, much harder. So the basis of this style of play is firstly being solid at the back, and then working to play the ball forward instead of just obviously lumping it, like just hoofing it forward and hoping for the best. We are. How long's Rossini been in charge? What are we?
6 months, maybe.
Yeah. So
that's sort of, I'm thinking October. So it's that? Yeah, about 6 months.
So 20 games.
Yeah, I think it's about that 21 games,
which is less than half a season, and yet people are unhappy that we are not haven't suddenly transitioned to this Liverpool, Barcelona, Real Madrid style of play where the expectation is great, and I think, but it's unrealistic. You cannot possibly go from where we were and bring in what we bring
17 players or something.
Well, I'm only thinking of in January.
Oh, in January, yeah, so, 3 new players.
Because most of the squad was here at the beginning of the year, so it's not like we had a huge turnover once Rossini was in charge. A couple of new players, and expect to suddenly become world beaters. I think,
and you think of the 3 players that came in, 2 of them have had outstanding starts to their City career in Connolly and also Darlow. where you think if you give Rosenior the trust in the summer to actually go out and pick the players that he wants to fit his style of play, chances are, on the evidence of January, that we'll actually improve the squad significantly.
Yeah. I think I think Abue has been a bit of a slow burn, but I feel like he's coming up to an acceptable performance level now. The last few games he's been okay, and he's been involved in creating some chances, and he seems to be linking up a little bit better. Traore's return has just blown my mind. I cannot fathom how someone who's been out for so long has come in and just gone straight to one of the best players on the park in every game that he's played for us. I think I feel like, in terms of the progression of the club moving forward and Rosenior in charge, I feel like we're pretty much where I would expect us to be. We've shown some level of improvement, and we get through the last the 6 or 7 games. We have an off season. We have an off season. We have a pre-season. We get everyone fully fit. We bring in the few players, make the few changes that we want, that we need to improve in a couple of key areas, and continue to build on what the foundation that Rosenior has laid so far this season. And I think next season's going to look completely different.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if we segue from the comment on Traore, if we give the votes for this game, and then we can, we're already sort of talking more broadly about the piece that came out in the media this week, but we can sort of expand on that a bit further. But I'll give my votes first. And I think we've pretty much already alluded to, I think Traore was the standout player on the pitch, played that great through ball for Longman. Really impressive on his return. Really, really surprising me too. I mean, when we signed him, looking at his statistics from previous clubs, just didn't see where he was going to be that creative player at this level. I just didn't think he had it in him. But look, he's blowing me away with his consistency of performance. I thought it was a really fantastic performance from him. I gave the 2 votes to Greaves and the 1 vote to Jones as really solid, dependable defenders, as they seem to be week in, week out. Jones with that great chance, as you said. Greaves involved with a few attacking chances as well, but I guess sort of hard to pick out too many different options in a 0-0.
Yeah, I actually, apart from Traore, because I agreed, I had Traore as my 3. Apart from that, I actually kind of struggled to figure out who I wanted elsewhere. I ended up going Tufan for my 2. And while I was frustrated that he missed that chance, I thought him and Traore actually were linking up quite well throughout the game, and were both involved in a couple of those really good opportunities where there was play between them. And I think Slater was the other one that led to Slater's shot that he put just outside the near post, and a couple of those others where I think it was Tufan, Traore involved before Longman's played through. Obviously, Tufan and Traore, when Traore was brought down, those 2 seem to be involved in all of the big plays of the game for us moving forward. So that's why I gave the 2 to Tufan. And then again, it got even harder again. I was like, 1 point, who really stood out? And I was tossing up, do I give one to Longman? He worked hard up front, and he almost got his thing. But I kind of feel like that one chance, the one big chance he had, Tufan also should have really done better with his big chance, but I really think in that moment that Longman should have done better. And it really frustrates me, that lack of composure that he has around the goal. And so I thought I went back to the other end, and I thought, let's go with someone who helped just to keep it tight at the back and prevent us from conceding a cheap goal. And so he didn't have too much to do, but I'm going to give it to Darlow.
Fair shout. And actually, one last point, your comment on Tufan reminded me, one last point I had on the game as a frustration was we only made the 1 substitution. We had Vaughan on the bench, I think, who was clearly sort of elevated from the academy setup. I think we signed him in January. You sort of think there's not a whole lot riding on this sort of game. It's in front of a packed house. You throw on a kid in that sort of situation, get the crowd a bit excited about what they can see with the debutant, I guess you'd say. make a few changes, try and see what you can do. I think he's an attacking player. He can sort of change things up a bit. I would have liked to see that. I think just the one change was a little bit frustrating to see, but I think it was my only frustration.
Yeah, and a valid frustration. Something like, Millwall packed house at home. Why we're not really just like going for the win? So
Yeah.
I guess that is a frustration that has sort of potentially shown out with Rosenior, that he is happy at times just to settle for the point and just play the game, and just sort of sometimes it feels like we let the momentum slip away from us, where that last 10 or 15 minutes of the game, especially after that red card, we should have been we tried to up the tempo, but it should have been much higher than it was. And we would have, I think we definitely would have created something, because there was a few patches where we upped the tempo and we went at them and we created the few of those, balls were bouncing around in the box, was real difficult to deal with, but it did sort of, then it would just slow down again to like a snail's pace with the ball. So that was really frustrating that we weren't able to. And I guess that's where some subs, some fresh legs would come on and really just drive that momentum right to the final whistle to try and grab it. But anyway,
there was a story during the week from The Sun, take that for what it's worth, rumoured to be an exclusive, to suggest that Ajun was looking at sacking Rosenior in the summer, lining up Vitor Campos, I think, Portuguese manager, if I'm not mistaken. I think the basis or the sort of the logic that they had was that Ajun has shown a tendency to be trigger happy in the past, which I think is complete rubbish. And I think they're sort of adding 2 and 2 and getting 5 to say, well, he sacked McCann soon after joining the club, and then he sacked Shotter pretty early in the season, both of which had very much understandable context behind them if they'd actually done a bit of research on that. It was very reassuring to see Baz came out the next day to say that it was complete rubbish. He had an interview with Ajun where Ajun said that he had 100% faith in Rosenior, that when he interviewed Rosenior the first time, he knew immediately that was his manager, and he had brilliant view of the game and have constant sort of meetings to debrief on how things are going and all these sorts of thoughts behind the team and everything, which sounds a bit more than the typical sort of full support of the board, which can sometimes be the death knell for a manager. So it seemed quite genuine and quite absolute in his faith in Rosenior. And I think Tan made similar sort of comments to say that the article was complete rubbish. So I guess you sort of think if they did make a change now, they've really sort of put their reputation on the line, I guess, in backing Rosenior to that extent. But it's a positive to see that they're fully backing him. And it's a really unfortunate timing of an article like that, because if there is no truth to it, then it's just causing disharmony or doubts or unrest for no particular reason. If there is truth to it, it's probably even worse, because you think, well, it's sort of leaking out that something's happening. It's probably just another red flag about the professionalness of the search for a manager, that sort of thing. But it does seem like there's no substance to it, which is the main thing. And we've already sort of talked a little bit about, as you say, I mean, Rosenior's been here for 6 months, and expectations on people for him to turn things around so fast. I actually find it quite funny that how much City have mirrored Chelsea over the last sort of 12 months, where you think that they also got taken over by a new owner who then didn't have a director of football at the beginning, so was doing a lot of the wheeling and dealing and signings himself, brought in a sort of up-and-coming promising young English manager and said it was a project and long-term and patience. And then Chelsea sacked Potter last week, and then this story came out, and I thought, wow, the parallels are quite freaky. But as you say, I mean, I just find it amazing in football these days, the impatience and the sort of the short attention span that clubs, supporters, everyone seems to have, where it's, if you're not achieving anything in the first 5 or 10 games, you're a failure, and you're not going to achieve anything and have to move on and find someone else. And it's, I guess, Watford have sort of perfected that model, and Chelsea as well a bit. But I think we're a little bit like, if Ajun hadn't come in, we're sitting there saying, well, we got promoted back into the Championship, we don't have expectations of promotion, we just want to stabilize and be a successful sort of sustainable championship club. Ajun's come in with that ambition to be in the Premier League as quickly as possible, and he's really sold that dream to the supporters, which is great. But it also means that I think a few people are then saying we should be getting promoted either this season or next season, and if we're not, that's on the manager or the players. And say, well, as you were saying, it's like he's been here 6 months. He's basically signed 3 players. He hasn't had that much of an ability to change the squad. How much are you actually expecting this guy to achieve with injuries as well?
Yeah, it's a. I mean, I think I've made it pretty clear what I think about, Rosenior's position at the club and everything. So it is very strange the short-sightedness or the short attention span, as you called it, of fans, media, and everyone. The go-to is, and I'm not trying to make a direct comparison between Rosenior and say like Sir Alex Ferguson, but like his first little time in charge at Manchester United was not the trophy-laden era that came, but they worked through that, and they put their trust in him and allowed him to build the team that he wanted and allowed him to do things the way that he wanted, and the success came from having that, being able to place that foundation.
And an even more recent
it doesn't
example,
work the other way. You don't like the manager. You don't just bring in a manager and get success. You have to lay the groundwork, and so I think that's like that patience.
I was going to say as well that an even more recent example is Arteta at Arsenal, where you think his first 2 seasons at Arsenal they finished 8th, then they finished 5th last season. And last season they started with 3 losses and they were sitting last after 2 seasons of finishing 8th. Supporters wanted him gone, and the board stuck with him and said, no, we see the vision, we see the group of players that he's bringing through, we see the style of play, we see the culture, we see everything. We're on the right path, just have faith. And look at them now. Like, I'm not saying that we're going to walk the Premier League in a couple of years, but you've got to have, I think the issue that I find with the way that football clubs are run so often these days is football clubs bring in a manager who then brings in maybe half a dozen new players who maybe they've worked with at previous clubs. So you look at McCann bringing in a bunch of players that he'd worked with at previous clubs. And then the manager leaves after 18 months because the club isn't happy with them or their performances or whatever. The players are still there. They bring in a new manager who brings in another half dozen players, and you end up with this sort of mishmash of styles of play or qualities of players, all sort of not really fitting a similar sort of style. And it's only when you have a manager at a club for 2, 3, 4 years. You look at Coventry under Robbins, you look at Luton when they had Nathan Jones. When they're there for that long, they can actually build the club in their image, and you actually get a distinct style of player. And it actually helps you with recruitment as well, because you actually know when, if we sell Oscar next season and you go, okay, well, we need this sort of striker to replace him, or you sell Graves potentially, you know what you need to find to replace him. And you get that consistency of style and culture at the club that you don't have if you go from McCann to Shota to Rosenior to, I don't know whoever would be next, but this foreign manager from Portugal or something, you go, he's going to want to bring in a bunch of his players. So there's a lot to be said for just having that patience. And sure, look, if we're sitting last in the Championship, leaking goals next season, which I would be very shocked if that was the case. Come October, November, similar with Shota, you can say, okay, well, maybe we need to reassess where we're at and whether it's working. But you've got to give Rosenior that chance to have the preseason, to have the summer window, to bed in his style, to get players back to full fitness and actually see what he can achieve with everything sort of working for him. I think I saw that if the season had started when he came in, we'd be sitting 10th. And you think that's with, Tete getting injured, Oscar getting injured, Oscar and Tete getting red cards, Connolly getting injured, Pelkas in and out of the side, all those sorts of, Ali getting injured, things like that. And we'd still be sitting essentially 10th if the season had started when he came in. And you think, well, that's a really great foundation to build from. And you think if you get the players back, you get the new signings in, it's a great launch pad for next season.
Yeah. It's just crazy what, I guess, just with what I said before, the level of expectation that has and I guess as you alluded to, with that Ajun's built this positive energy and sort of this level that sold the dream to them, that they've sort of mistaken the dream for the our reality right now, and so expectations got a bit out of hand. But I think the season will end however it ends. We'll pick up a couple of wins in the last few games. It'll temper out. The season will end. We have the off season. Everybody can calm down, and then the transfer window will start, and we'll go fucking crazy again.
Yeah, that's it. Well, speaking of, we did have a question in the comments talking about Oscar. It's funny, I just sort of mentioned the potential for selling him. That was purely as an example. I wasn't saying we should. Saying, I've seen a few people saying we need a new striker for next season. I enjoy Oscar. I think he's having a bit of a down period, but he can do it. Who would we bring in that's better? And I do agree. I think Oscar showed with Tete when Tete was at full fitness that he does have the ability. I think bringing in another striker to complement them rather than replace him, I think is what we probably need to be looking at. I really like the look of Cannon, who's on loan at Preston at the moment from Everton, and I think it's his first loan out or something, and he's looking really good. Someone like a young English striker like that, whether it's on loan or on a permanent deal in the summer, I think would be great, because you're almost looking at upgrading or improving on Tyler Smith, because I presume we're probably going to release or sell him in the summer, but you want that higher quality young English striker. I mean, someone like a Cameron Archer would be awesome, but I think he'll be playing Premier League next season. I think that's probably the way to go. I wouldn't think that we'd sell Oscar unless we're really kind of feeling the pinch of FFP or something. Yeah,
I can't see. I think I agree. I think for first season in England to come in and have got double figures goals is sensational. It's not easy to do. So I think he has shown he can do it. It's been a little bit inconsistent, but I think there's been big periods of the season where we've been inconsistent. So I think, as you mentioned, that when Tete has been playing with him, he looks much better. So by the time we get Tete and Traore and Oscar all working together, I think we should have a pretty decent strike force. And I think I'm sort of agree with you. I think we're looking for trying to find a better depth player than what's currently available at the club. I think I'm sure in a few weeks we'll have the transfer discussion about who's going to leave and who's going to stay. But I think it's really going to be just about probably really realistically depth and supporting players to get the best out of those guys. I really don't see any reason why we should sell them. I think they've both shown, or like Oscar's certainly shown, that he's capable at this level. He was run alongside the leading goal scorers, for the season for a long period, because he grabbed, did he get 8 or 9 very quickly in the season or something crazy? So, I'd certainly keep him, unless it was one of those, someone came in and wanted to offer us £20 million or something crazy for him, and you go, well, we got him for nothing. So
yeah. Yeah, well, that's it. If we've got a huge offer and you think it all goes to benefit for FFP and, it's an offer you can't really turn down, then maybe we do it. And then you go, well, we've got £20 million. We can now spend, £7 million on 2 new strikers. You're suddenly spending £14 million or whatever. You're banking £6 million straight off the bat, sort of thing.
Yeah, well, what do we buy Hernandez for? 6 million or something, or was it 10?
So Yelovich and Long was 7 each, and then we sold Long for 12 million and bought Hernandez for 10 or something. Yeah, and I was like, in 6 months, it's easy profit sort of thing.
But that's a guy who came in and then eventually, not straight over, scored us 22 goals in the championship or something. So anyway.
That's it. Okay, well, let's do a quick round of Who Am I, and then we'll look ahead to the 2 games if you're ready.
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, so I made 36 appearances for City and I scored 3 goals.
$36 and 3. I get stuck in this thing where I think it must be like super easy. I go 36 games. That's like, what are we, like 39 games in this season? So someone who's missed like a couple of games. And I'm like, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be any
Yeah.
combination of things. And so my first instinct is someone like Tufan.
Is like who?
Tufan.
Yeah.
But,
I had Tufan recently. I can't remember if that was for you or
yeah.
someone else.
And probably it could very well could have been. But yeah, I'm not. I just don't. Yeah, nah. I need more informations.
All good. This is a more extensive clue because this player's a bit obscure, so I've given a bit more information on this one. So I joined City on loan for the 2015-2016 season. So that was our season back in the Championship under Steve Bruce. After a short spell at Nottingham Forest, where I was on loan the previous season, and I then joined Brighton on loan following my stay at City. I don't know if either of those bits of information help, but I thought I'd just give a bit more information. Though more information might actually make it more confusing. I don't know.
See, because like then when you said the 2015 season, I was like, then I thought about, and you said like loan, and I was like, huh. I wonder. It's not the guy who's like golden boot at the moment, is it?
Could have been. I was going to say as an extra clue, I was like, it is somebody that we've mentioned on this podcast.
The Nottingham Brighton thing didn't help me at all.
Didn't help at all. No, I wouldn't have thought so.
But when you said on loan, and then I was like, 3 goals in 36, and I was like, oh, that sounds about the right time for maybe like a Chuba Akpom.
Yeah. Where's his 21 goals in the season for us back then? That would have been nice. I mean, Emma, we're just talking about Hernandez. That was that season where Hernandez scored all the goals.
Yeah, but I guess, and that's like another, like you mentioned, bringing in a young English striker.
Yeah.
Well, that's we did that then, and he only got a few goals. But look at what they then go on to do. If you can get lucky enough to see the potential, and then like steal them and keep them,
yeah.
continue to develop them yourself. But
I'm actually surprised he made 36 appearances because I think you think that side had like Hernandez, Diame. I mean, I guess. Other than that, he was probably the next in line because Jelavic left pretty early that season. But 36 appearances, I mean, I guess most of them might have been subs, but I don't know.
That's what I was saying. I feel like he did, like, there's quite a lot of, like, the 20-minute half hours at the end. But I feel like he did make a substantial, like, still made a fair amount of starts.
And did he score? I think he scored a hat-trick in the Cup for us against, like, Berry or someone, if I'm remembering right. I think in the FA, I'm going to look that up.
I think something like right. that. There's some remember because I vaguely remember getting like really excited and being like, this guy's gonna do some stuff.
He definitely. I think he scored first game of the season. It was him and Klukas that scored, and so we were like, oh, it's the two new signings. Off to a great start. Yeah, he did. And then I'm just gonna look while we're talking. We played Berry in the FA Cup. Yeah, Akpom. 2 goals and a penalty. So there you go. Well, speaking of strikers, and he's gone on to do pretty decently since then. We'll preview both the games together because they are. We've got the Good Friday game against Sunderland, and then we play Millwall. I think it's on the Easter Monday, so it's going to be kind of awkward time zones for us. I'm on
holidays.
Oh, yeah, lucky you. When I saw the Sunderland game was on the Friday, I was like, oh, sweet, it'll be on KO. And then I realized, no, actually, there'll be a bunch of games on the Friday. But 2 pretty tough games. I mean, Sunderland have dropped off a bit. They're sitting 12th now in the table, though they did draw with Burnley last time out. But Millwall's sitting up in 5th. We drew 0-0 with them last time. I think it was Rossini's first game. I think it was the game where Oscar got sent off for that high boot on Cresswell. So obviously, like we were talking before, we drew with Sunderland the last time we played them as well. So 2 teams that we weren't able to overcome last time we played them, but definitely teams that we matched up reasonably well against and should look at with a decent chance of getting a win.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this earlier, looked at the fixtures, and I thought, like, I don't really know which one is the easier fixture, as you sort of alluded to. I sort of went, Sunderland's down in 12th now. I feel like they were flipped around. I think last time we played them and Sunderland was higher and Millwall was a bit lower. But and then I was like, maybe one of them's in better form, but not. I feel like they're pretty similar in their form. But I think like I don't know, 3 or 4 points. Like, I'd be happy if we get a win out of one of them, and then I feel like I could accept a loss or a draw in the other. because I think everyone's getting really panicked about like that we're still just going to slide off into obscurity and find ourselves in the relegation zone. But I think a win will help very quickly and very strongly to alleviate a lot of those fears.
It feels like the start of January when we had like all those draws in a row and everyone went, oh, we're getting back into a relegation fight. We're in trouble. This is, awful. And then we got those 2 or 3 wins in a pretty short space of time and really pulled away. I don't like, especially with, I think Reading got their 6-point deduction today.
Yeah, I don't feel
QPR's
concerned that we're going to end up in the relegation zone.
It's
it would
more
have
about
to be an absolute collapse, and it'd be an absolute disaster if something like that happened. But I don't see it happening. I think we'll just continue along the same vein, picking up a few points here and there. We're not going to finish this season picking up another 20 points, but I also don't think we're going to pick up 0 points. So I think whatever we do is just going to be enough to just keep us ticking along. And it's the same, like the teams below us, the teams that are currently the worst 3 or 4 teams in the division would need to pick up. Like they need to get 4 or 5 wins out of their 7, left or something to get ahead of us if we're just continuing what we're doing. So.
Like it's funny, like you look at where we are, we're kind of like almost like the bottom rung of mid-table, because you look at the table and we're 3 points behind Stoke in 13th. Call it 6 point. We're 6 points or 7 points behind Watford in 11th, so top half. And 6 points behind Sunderland in 12th, in top half. And then we're 6 points clear of QPR, who are in 18th. So we're 17th, they're 18th. So there's 6 points between us and 18th, 6 points between us and top half. So we're sort of in that mid-range where I think we'll probably end up finishing like that 13th, 14th, maybe 15th, 16th. But I don't think we could really drop much lower because QPR can't buy a win. So I don't think we're in any danger of going much lower than where we are.
No, and to be honest, I think that sort of buffer has been, I think like it's the frustration that we haven't been able to reduce that gap, on the teams above us. But that sort of buffer has basically existed, and it's just we've shifted up or down a little bit in the table. But that 6-point gap, has between the teams above or the teams below, or the our benchmarks that we're looking to try and break has just sat there pretty much over the last 2 months, and we've been going, we're 6 points off the top 6 or whatever, but now we've dropped down a bit, but those buffers still exist. So I think we're not really. It was just part of the course. More games being played, more points being on offer, and it's just the way that the season's ending. But I'm not concerned that we're going to find ourselves in a relegation dogfight or anything ridiculous like that.
I think it's interesting. I mean, as you said, it's hard to know which of these is the easier game because we've got Sunderland away, who are lower in the table, but we've got Milwall at home, who are higher in the table, doing a bit better, as you say.
Probably the away game's probably the easy one then.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
The way our form works.
Although in saying that, playing Milwall, who potentially will need to be coming to the MKM trying to get a result to stay in the top 6 or sort of get into sort of 3rd or 4th where they can get a home playoff first leg or however that works. They'll probably be coming out at us. So there's probably more opportunity to maybe find some space and create some opportunities against them. It's going to be interesting. I think like you said, I think if we could get 4 points out of this, I'd be pretty happy. I think if it was 2 draws again, it's a little bit it's not the end of the world, but you're also kind of similar to my point on Vaughan. You go, the whole point that we can't really drop much lower. Why not just kind of go for it? Look, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. I guess in terms of personnel, do we know, is Connolly back yet? Because he was on the grass, I think, last week. So he must be close to...
Yeah, I think he was ruled out of Sunderland, but I think that was basically Rosenia saying he won't make Sunderland, but he will make Millwall.
Well, because I think that'll be good to, get him 15 minutes at the end of the game or something and a bit of a run. That'll be nice to see him back because he started, great, and then
you cursed him. You said we'll sign him permanently. Like he's scored the 2 goals. Actually, it's probably more me cursing him, to be honest, because I think I was the one that said, "Well, what if he doesn't score any more goals?" And
well, and I think the comment might have even been made. The only way I could see him not scoring any more goals is if he got injured.
Yeah. But no, it would be good to see him back, and I think when you start to think that really we've got it. I mean, also granted, if Oscar's meant to be fit for the Sunderland game, sounds like he's battling an ankle injury, though. You think really, other than Tete and Christie, we're pretty much at full strength all of a sudden. And I don't know what's happening with Pelkas, but I think he might have had food poisoning or something. I think I heard.
Yeah, it seemed like some weird. But
so if he's back as well, you sort of think we've suddenly got a fully fit squad just about. So really, that's when you start to go, we should just be going and saying, I mean, especially if Rosenior wants to say to Rajun, I can play this attacking football, watch me put out an attacking lineup and really just go for it just to prove a point. These are the sorts of games where you've got no pressure on it. So just go for it.
Yeah. I guess that's it. I just want to see us not just sit in for 2-0 draws, not throw away 2 games and just get blown off the park. I just want us to go, I guess, like have a go. Hopefully, find some composure in front of goal. Get the ball in the net a couple of times. We cheer, we laugh, we have a good time. We go home, and just get through the end of the season. Pretty much is sort of where I'm at the moment. As I think we said a few weeks ago, like we're at a point where most of the games are dead rubbers for us. So there's not a lot of excitement in that. But if we get through the end of the season and we continue to, develop the system, figure out which players we want to keep, which are working, which aren't fitting in, who aren't gelling, then it's not wasted time really. And, that they can all sit around in the off season and make some big decisions.
That's it. Yeah. Well, look, we'll probably start, as you said before, we'll probably start to refocus on transfer window and movements and personnel over the next couple of weeks of the podcast. But until next time, I think we've got after this, we've got 5 games left after these 2 games. So it really is starting to get to the finish line of the season. And we'll be back this time next week to review these 2 games. But thank you for joining me, Dan.
Not a problem.
And thank you, everyone, for listening in. Until next time, come on.